Topo Athletic is committed to lifelong health and better movement. Topo builds running shoes for those who get out there every day regardless of weather, speed, energy, or mood. Their distinctive fit and feel combines instinctive human movement with modern performance and lightweight comfort to help you keep going, keep trying, and keep moving. Discover the Topo difference and step into a run experience unlike any other. Hey everybody, welcome to our 95th edition of our Fireside Chat. I cannot believe we are up to episode 95. Today we're going to be talking to ultra marathoner and content creator Wes Plate, who has raced the Cocodona 250 from the inaugural year up until he'll be racing this year, plus he'll be racing the Divide 200. So we're going to talk to him about that, as well as some other ideas, other topics surrounding Wes Plate's journey through ultra running. So if you've got questions or comments, please make sure you bring them to the forefront. We will be able to address them through Instagram, through YouTube, through and LinkedIn as well. So without further ado, here comes Wes Plate. Hey, Wes, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Jason. Hey, thanks a lot for inviting me on. This is quite an honor. This is cool.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, man. Like when Ohm said that you were going to be joining us and he said you raced the inaugural Cocodona like I did, I was like, well, and we're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of stories going through those, for me, 4.5 days. I don't know how long it took you to finish the event.
I think it was I think the first year it was 106 hours, 104. I think it was 104 hours, a little bit more than 4 days. Yeah, so almost 4.5 days. Yeah.
Yeah, I was right around 110. So I was just behind you, chasing you.
Cool. Yeah, right. Good.
So we like to start off our fireside chats with a controversial topic so we can get the audience on one side or the other at this point. Good. Maybe they're on our side, both of our sides. So pineapple on pizza, is that a yay or a nay for you?
I'm kind of indifferent about it. Some people really hate it. I'll eat it if it's in front of me, sure. But I probably don't order it. How about that?
That's a good answer. Like if you don't need to, you don't order it. That I'm a native New Yorker, like I told you when we were in the green room, and so pineapple on pizza is not a thing for us.
You're militantly against it?
Militantly against it. Like
right.
It could probably be if it was the last thing I had to eat, then sure, I would try it. But other than that, it's just not happening.
I love it.
So one of the notes that Ohm and I were exchanging when we were talking about having you on the show was a journey through weight loss for you. And so one of the things that we do with Run, Try, Bike is we love to tell stories of athletes overcoming obstacles on their journey to chase their own finish line. So I'd like to dive into that a little bit with you, if you don't mind, about the weight loss journey, how endurance sports played a role in it, and what you're doing today to continue to stay healthy and fit as you continue to chase these long distance finish lines.
Yeah, well, let's see. So I was a runner in high school. Wasn't necessarily a good runner, but I ran track and cross country. I thought of myself as a sprinter back in those days. I ran cross country because I liked the team aspect of it, and everyone on the team was really cool. But I felt like I was a pretty terrible long distance runner. And as I went into college, I ran a lot. I started to run less. And I think part of the reason why I ran less was because as I got a little bit older and had more access to alcohol and beer, I just consumed more of that. So eventually that just started to pack a little bit of pounds on my body. And as I got heavier, it became more and more difficult for me to run. And then I think after some time, running just became it sort of fell off my interest list because I just sort of got away from it. In my adult life, I would occasionally think about getting back into running because I would have like some memory of missing it. But it was always really hard for me to attempt to get back into it because I had gained some weight, and that was primarily because of just an unhealthy lifestyle centered around a lot of drinking. And I guess I was also smoking during the time too. There was just a lot of things I was doing that weren't, objectively healthy behaviors. And so I think at my heaviest, I was about 245 pounds. And that would probably have been around 2007, something like that I would have been about that weight. And so it was in 2007, right after Christmas in 2007, that I went to a treatment facility in Seattle for alcohol addiction. and basically set out to get sober and stop drinking. I think I had had enough. I'd had a few of occurrences in life leading into that Christmas that were embarrassing to the family, embarrassing to me. Just the drinking was just getting out of control, and my behavior when I was just completely wasted was just unacceptable. So I went to a treatment facility in Seattle that unfortunately no longer exists. It was really a controversial but yet very successful hospital. It was called Schick-Shadel Hospital, and they practiced a aversion therapy that was very dramatic. I mean, I remember when I was in the hospital getting treated, I really felt like I was in the movie A Clockwork Orange when they were doing all these things to the terrorizing and torturing the people in that movie. They basically forced us to drink increasing amounts to the point of just getting really, really sick in order to help the body associate being really sick with the alcohol. And then that was alternated with a therapy day that was actually really quite pleasant. But in any case, they used to promote they claimed like an 80% success rate. And there was a time when I was in the hospital for my 10-day treatment where all of a sudden just a switch flipped in my head. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, wait, I don't even want this stuff anymore. And I've been really lucky that since that time I got out at the beginning of 2008, I've never once wanted a drink of alcohol. This has never interested me. And so it's been, thankfully for me, very lucky to stay away from it. But what was interesting was I went home from that experience and I still had this sort of desire, my body was so used to all that sugar intake that I could remember like craving sugar. And so I was eating a pint of Ben and Jerry's ice cream every single night because I just wanted it so much. And even with that, the pounds started to just fall off of me because I had reduced my caloric intake so much from my drinking days.
Right.
So I started to lose a bunch of weight. And I don't remember how long it didn't all go away immediately, but it was coming off quickly. And by 2011, I think I had basically, over the course of a little over 3 years, I had lost 70 pounds. And so once I got down to that lighter weight, it became interesting for me to try getting into exercise again. And so that was kind of how I was able to get back into exercise and get back into running because I had finally stopped drinking. And by stopping drinking, I was finally able to drop the weight. Yeah.
That's interesting because when we talk to a lot of people, running/exercise is a part of their weight loss journey. But for you, it was sort of like at the end of your weight loss journey where you then started to pick up running. Was there a catalyst for you in which you went, you know what, I'd like to give this running thing a try again. I did it in high school. And now that I've lost weight, I'm going to do this again. Was there something that was like an event or a friend or something that gave you that sort of idea?
Yeah, there was. And to me, the conversation is still very fresh in my mind, although it may not be the conversation that you're going to think. So I've always been into watches. Even when I was a kid, I was into watches. I used to save my money up for like a calculator watch, and I once saved my money up for a FM radio watch. I just like watches were really cool. So in 2012, I think it was the very beginning of 2012, I was talking with a friend at work, a buddy I'd been friends with for a long time, and he was showing me his Garmin GPS watch. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And he was telling me how he would go for a run, and then the data from the watch would then go online and would show up on this website called Strava. And he's showing all this to me, and I'm like, this is cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm like, I got to get me one of these watches. And so that was kind of the thing that helped get me. That was like the shiny object that helped me run towards that. And like, oh my God, I got to get that watch. I got to get this Strava thing. And if I go back to the beginning of my Strava days, I mean, I wasn't running a lot back then, but I was, that's what got me started, was just that ability to see the thing that I ran, like show up as a shape on a map. And, and that continues to inspire me today. You know, if I go for a long run, I really want it to look cool on a map. But yeah, that's what it was, dude. It was the Garmin watch plus Strava that was the thing that kind of helped motivate me. Because I'm I mean, as I said, I had been wanting to kind of get back into it. And so I was sort of motivated, but I think sometimes I need an external stimulus to sort of give me extra motivation. And that's what it was for me.
I got to tell you, like I've been running this business for 3 years, starting our 4th year this year. And I love everybody's reason for why they got started or how they got started. But this has got to be the most unique reason for starting running. It was like a love of watches and seeing it plot out on a map. That is fantastic. Are you wearing a Garmin today, or have you?
I sure am. Garmin Enduro 2 right here, baby. Garmin all the way.
Hey, Garmin, if you're not sponsoring this guy, get on it. Like, this is a great story. We'll be sure to tag them in this story.
Yeah, awesome.
So you said you were a sprinter in high school, and we're going to talk about 200 plus miles, 100-mile races and stuff. How does one go from being a sprinter to this idea of like even longer events? You know, even when you first get started, you're talking about miles, not a 100-meter sprint or a 400-meter sprint.
Well, when I started, I mean, I really didn't know a lot about running. I think when I started running, well, the first thing I did was I would just run to the next telephone pole and then walk to the next telephone pole and just alternate telephone poles. My mom had taught me that because she had run 2 marathons when I was like 9 and 10 years old. And she had gotten started running with the telephone pole method. And so I had that in my head. And then occasionally I had some printout. I don't have it anymore, but back then I also had something from my high school cross country coach that was some sort of like training program or something. So I had a couple of tools, but not a lot. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I didn't necessarily have any ambitions when I started running either. I just wanted to just kind of get in shape and run a little bit. I think at the time I had the idea that maybe I would run a 5K every once in a while. And I think in 2012, I might have run a 5K or 2. But yeah, I didn't really have much of any plan at all. I wasn't expecting to go long distance. I mean, even though, of course, a 5K is still pretty long distance if you are running 400-meter races.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't really have much of a plan. It was in 2014 that I just happened to be running in a place I wasn't familiar with. I was on a trip. I was running in Portland, Oregon. I took a wrong turn. I was intending to run a 5-mile loop, which for me at the time would have been a pretty good distance. But I took a wrong turn and my loop ended up being 7 miles. And so a good friend of mine from high school saw that on Strava, and she told me, hey, if you can run 7 miles, you can run a half marathon. So would you like to run a half marathon with me this upcoming November? So this was probably like July or something that the mistake happened. And so I had a few months. And so, I didn't have any reason to say no. In fact, I was kind of interested in doing it. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll run a half marathon with you. And I had no idea what I was doing. I think I found a Hal Higdon schedule online that I probably printed out. And so I followed that training program. But when it came to race day, I really made some mistakes. Like I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't fuel at all during the run. I just didn't even know. And so when I think it was around mile 11, with 2 miles left to go, I just completely ran out of gas and really struggled to get those last 2 miles done. But when I finished that first half marathon, it was a feeling that I don't think I've really felt even since then, of just elation of like, oh my God, I finished. This feels amazing. And so because I realized that I didn't know what I was doing, because I talked to my friend afterwards and I talked to some of her friends, and everyone's like, what do you mean you didn't eat breakfast before the race? And I'm like, I didn't know I was supposed to. So that encouraged me to set out to, in my mind anyway, get good at the half marathon distance. It's like, okay, I think I enjoyed it, but let me see if I can get better at it. And so then I ran a few more halves because I had it in my head that what would be fun for me is if I could just one day just show up at a half marathon and run it without having to specifically train for it. And so that kind of became a goal along the way. And as I think what happens with a lot of runners is I did that distance, and then over time it led to other distances. And
Well, that was going to be my next question. Yeah. So you run half marathon? Do you progress to marathon and then 50K and then 50 mile? And how long does it take you to go from half marathon to the ultra world?
Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying at the time, this felt totally like a natural progression. At the time, it felt like I took my time in getting from that half marathon to what happened next. In reality, I ran that first half marathon in November of 2014. And I think it was, or it was October, one of those two. Anyway, so it was towards the end of 2014. I ran my first 50K in October of 2015. So approximately a year later, I found myself finishing my first 50K. So I skipped the marathon and just went from half marathon to 50K with a few half marathons in between.
Why did you skip the marathon? Was it just
worked out that way?
Okay.
So once I had trained for that half marathon, I thought to myself, I think I'm in good enough physical shape now that maybe I could go join the local workout group that I was previously too intimidated to join. So I went and joined the local workout group. They called themselves a boot camp. It was at like 5 a.m. They worked really hard. And there I met some guys who were runners. And one of them was this guy, Tony. He had run, I can't remember at the time, he'd run like 4 100 milers. And my friend Eric, who I met, he had just recently finished a 50K. So I met these guys who were in the ultra world a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it just sort of, to me, is like, oh, that was exciting. And so it just sort of naturally worked out that I ended up the next year doing a first 50K with another one of the running guys who I had met at the boot camp. So like I said, when I look back at it now, I'm like, oh my God, there was only a year between those two things. But at the time, it really felt like there was a lot more involved.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the elation you had crossing that first half marathon hasn't really been met at these other distances. Why do you think that is? Is it because it was like that first big accomplishment, and so anything after that was gonna, like, I don't want to say pale in comparison, but kind of be like, I've done the 13 miles, so naturally I can do a 50K?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember being really uncomfortable in those last 2 miles as I was just completely gassed and my legs hurt. And those were feelings I'd never had before. I hadn't experienced it. So pushing through that last little bit of the race to go across the finish line, all of it was a new experience.
Yeah.
And so it's very possible that since then I have had the same, I don't know, endorphins or whatever run through me, but just I don't feel it the same because maybe I'm more used to it or whatever. But that first time just felt so much different than anything that's happened since then.
Gotcha. So you and I were talking backstage, and you and I both did Cocodona in the inaugural year. You mentioned that you did Moab 240 prior to that. How was it? Was it in the same year, or was Moab 240 the year prior and then Cocodona in 2021?
I did Moab in 2019.
Okay.
And so my progression was first 50K in October of 2015. The very next, like 2 weeks later, I paced a friend who ran 100K also in 2015. And all that together just got me super excited about this stuff. During that 100K pacing, I met some runners who were doing 120 mile distance, and they were exhausted. And when I saw what they were hallucinating, and when I saw like how they were suffering, something about that really spoke to me. Like, oh my God, I want to know what they're feeling. So a friend of mine asked me if I would want to run 100 miler that next March. Okay. And so I'm like, yeah, let's get into this. I'm ready. And so I just dove into training, just headlong, 7 days a week, train. A friend of mine who actually ran that boot camp workout group, at the time she kept saying, Wes, you need to take rest days. You need to take care of yourself. And I'm like, I don't got time for rest days. I got to get ready for 100 miler. Well, I ended up getting injured at the very beginning of 2016. Hurt my ankle pretty bad just by overtraining. And that took me out for about 6 months. And so I did not run that March 100 miler. It took me a while to get back into things. It got me a while before I could do a 50K again. but I also learned a lot too. I learned about footwear and proper gear, and also learned about rest days. And then 2017, I ran my first 50 miler. And then in order to prepare for that, I hired a coach. And so that was, I felt to me, an important step to be like, okay, well, I've been doing all this sort of half-ass on my own, but let's like get some professional help. So and I was really nervous about 50 miles too. So I got a coach for that. That was 2017. And then towards the end of 2018, my running buddies who I had met through that boot camp class, we were all talking about, hey, let's do the Mountain Lakes 100 in 2018, a 100 miler in Oregon. And so that was terrifying to me, but we were all going to do it together. So I signed up for that in September of 2018. I did my first 100 miler. And then I guess it was that kind of got me into like, okay, well, I want to do, by that time I had heard about 200s and I'd seen people online doing it and I was inspired by it. And so in the beginning of 2019, I signed up for Moab in 2019. So then 2019, first Moab experience, first 200-mile experience. And then 2 years later, or I guess a year and a half later, in May of 2021, Cocodona, which was my second 200-miler.
Having the experience at Moab from 18 months prior, what did you take as far as either lessons or experience into Cocodona? I mean, there are different times of the year, different courses, a lot of differences, but were there some lessons that you were able to carry over?
Well, I think what I learned at Moab, my primary like aha moment was how amazingly resilient and powerful we are as humans and as athletes. And so, in fact, what happened was the course, of course, is always changing, but still at around mile 120 of Moab, there's a pretty strong climb up to an aid station at Shea Mountain. And during this crazy climb, I ended up injuring a hamstring. And so when I left the Shea Mountain aid station, I couldn't run. It hurt to run, but I could walk without any problem. I could power hike easy, but running was painful. So I ended up spending like most of the second half of Moab unable to run. But okay, I was still like making 16-minute miles a lot of times, hiking pretty quick. But as those days went on after the injury, it was improving. So I could feel myself getting better. And by the very end, I was actually running a little bit. So I learned that there's in the 200, you have time to recover. Yes. And you can actually heal. I learned that. So I came away with the whole experience just sort of feeling like, hey, there's, barring any real injury, as long as we're able to take care of ourselves and fuel our body, there's actually there's almost no limit to what we can do, I felt like. Right. And so I went into Cocodona thinking, well, I've finished a similar distance before. It was really, really hard. I didn't expect how hard it was going to be, but I also really enjoyed the experience of pushing my body. And so the lesson I took into Cocodona was that despite how hard it was going to be, it was certainly possible. And so I was ready for the challenge.
Yeah, I would imagine that having the experience from Moab, not that it lightens the expectation of the difficulty, but it certainly helps to carry that over, I would think. Let's talk about Cocodona, because you and I shared the course that first year. For you, favorite part of the entire Cocodona course on the first year, because it may have changed over the last couple of years, but on that in 2021, what was your favorite part of the race besides the finish line?
It was, I think my favorite part of the inaugural Cocodona was coming into Sedona on some of the single track trails. So after the Deer Pass aid station, eventually we hit a water, there was a water station at the high school, and then we got onto some single track, and the single track sort of basically into where we finally got to the aid station. Anyway, during that single track section, I was running like really well, and I was feeling incredible. And it was some of the most incredible runner's high I think I had until that moment ever felt. And I couldn't believe that. I mean, however many miles in, I was 150 maybe, I don't even know. Yeah, I was so many miles in at that point, but yet running as though I was fresh legs. It was a real revelation to me about what's possible that late into a race. And it was a peek into what I've come to sort of realize and talk publicly about in my running, which is that I'm a really good day 3 runner. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't have gotten into 200s, because who runs long enough to discover that day 3 is where they start to blossom? But yeah, that was an amazing experience for me to have that first enlightenment into that there. And so, yeah, for me, it's a pretty easy choice. That was my favorite moment.
I don't know if you've seen the picture, but Ohm shares it all the time. It's me sleeping on the trail in Sedona because when I left the church, and I was feeling good, and I was starting to feel a little tired when we got into that single track area, and they had like a water aid station, but it was just a cooler sitting out there on the street.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I said to my pacer, Maria, I was like, man, I'm not feeling good. So she gave me one of those Starbucks espresso shots, and I drank that thing, and that caffeine hit. And I was, like you said, I was running. I was feeling great. But then it was like somebody pulled the power plug out of me. I was like, I just powered down as soon as that caffeine was out. And there I am laying on the side of the trail, totally passed out for like 30 minutes because I had no energy whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Yeah. Well, because that year, first year especially, I hadn't slept very much until Sedona. I think I was trying to do the thing that probably a lot of people do, which is like, how far can I go without sleeping?
Right.
And so I was a mess because I hadn't slept very much, but I had almost an equally bad evening on that third night as I had a really good afternoon and morning earlier. So awesome third day running, terrible third evening. I was so sad and mad, but I was exhausted. And then when I finally I took 3-hour nap at the mile 180 aid station, and that fixed up a lot of things for me. It also taught me that the idea of trying to go as long as you can without sleep is not a good strategy, at least not for me.
For me either. Like I got up Lane Mountain, got into that mile 72 campsite area. That was the first aid station. I slept for like 20 minutes and then started going again. And I could just feel immediately like the body was just not interested.
Yeah.
And so every day thereafter, I would take go to sleep in the van for at least 3 hours so that I could have some energy to go the next day. And even still was still sleeping on the side of the trail every now and again. Which brings me to another question about strategy for 200s, because you are a veteran. You've done Moab, you've done Cocodona every year. Since then, you're going to be doing the Divide 200 this year in addition to Cocodona too. What is your sleep strategy like now? And is it different based on the courses that you're racing?
My sleep strategy has changed a lot since those first couple of years. And I don't think it's necessarily course specific, because I think what I've come to understand that works well for me is to try to get some sleep every night. Even the first night, which part of me feels like it's too early to sleep. I'm only, 24 hours into this thing, but I think that getting that early sleep just puts some energy into the bank for later. So it just about every 200 I've done, when I can, I try to sleep the first night and then time another sleep the next night, hopefully. I find that it's just easier to sleep when it's nighttime instead of trying to sleep during the daytime.
Same.
And yeah, so just trying to sleep maybe an hour or maybe about an hour-ish each day is something that I try to shoot for. And then with the opportunity to add a little bit extra here and there. If I come into an aid station and I'm more tired than expected, take a nap. Or if I'm on the trail and I'm a wreck, I'm going to lay down and take a nap. I'll do that too.
Are you doing the 200s with crew and pacers, or are you doing them solo?
I'm doing them crew, no pacers.
Gotcha. Is the 200 distance your preferred distance over the others? And if so, why that over the other distances?
It totally is my favorite distance. It has become the thing that I love doing the most. And I think it's because of the amount of time we're out there is so long that it's an emotional journey as much as it is a physical journey. And I love everything about how difficult it is and the emotional ups and downs along the way. It feels impossible during some times of it, but yet, just keep on moving, one foot in front of the other. And And the next thing you know, you're late on, not next thing you know, but eventually you get to another aid station, eat some more, come back to life. I feel like it is an incredible experience to do. And I've been lucky to do it several times and finish it several times. And even I think it's a once in a lifetime thing that totally changes your view on the world. And to be able to do a once in a lifetime thing multiple times is just, it just continues to reveal to me how strong I am. And I have enough self-esteem issues that I like to be reminded of, oh, you know what? There may be a lot of reasons that my brain tells me that I'm terrible, but I can go out there and run this really hard thing and I can finish it. And people like watching me do it. So it motivates me.
I'm with you on the idea of like, I've got enough in my head telling me how bad I am at something, being able to accomplish something. You mentioned about getting food. What's the one item that you have to have when you're going through these events? Not necessarily in your vest, but when you get to your crew and at an aid station.
It's hamburgers. I love burgers so much at an aid station. Yep. If I get to an aid station and they're not serving burgers, I get really sad. I'm like, wait, what are you serving? It's like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll have that. But a burger, that's what I want. Absolutely.
I don't remember what the aid station is before you get to Whiskey Row and Prescott. But I remember being at that aid station and telling my crew, I'm like, I need Impossible Whoppers and Klondike bars when I get to Whiskey Row and Prescott. And those two things were like raindrops falling from the heaven in the desert. Yeah. Like it couldn't have been any better. And I think it's helped me answer the question, what would you do for a Klondike bar? The answer is I'd run 250 miles for it, clearly.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, because that first year at Cocodona, we were all suffering the food shortages and the food problems. You know, that was one thing that they didn't anticipate very well, is how to do that. Which is one of the reasons why I went back to Cocodona the second year. I'm like, okay, let's see how they fix the aid stations and let's see what they do. And of course, our Vipa listened really well, and the food was amazing ever since then. But yeah, we didn't have burgers that first year.
I remember when we got to the church aid station outside of Sedona. I got there at night and they were like, what do you want? And I had this at 100 Miler and I said, I want potatoes with maple syrup. And they were like, well, we don't have mashed potatoes, but we have these hash browns that you rehydrate with hot water and in a carton, right? And I was like, well, let's give it a try. Let's see if it works. And so they put the hot water in there. You shake it up, right? The potatoes bloom, poured that maple syrup in there, and it was glorious. Like that's my tip for people who are racing 100 miles and 200 miles. Get yourself either mashed potatoes with maple syrup or some sort of potato with maple syrup, because you got the quick hitter in the maple syrup and you got the long carb in the potato, and it's glorious.
I'm gonna have to try that. I often bring with me mashed potato cups. Just like a single serving, or it's more than a single serving of mashed potatoes, but it's so convenient to put it into the little cup thing. And I often carry Untapped is the brand, maple syrup with me. And so, yeah, I've got all of it. I'm going to have to just put them together. It's never occurred to me.
You're ready. You're set up.
I'm pumped.
So the last question before we get into the rapid fire, you mentioned people love watching you do these events. So are you talking about your YouTube channel and how you're documenting your journeys through these events?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to have the opportunity to share my stuff. So really quick, how that happened is my background is in video editing. I started my career as a video editor making TV commercials here in the Seattle area. And later on, I moved into a different side of the industry where I now am a product designer creating video editing tools for video editors. And so back in 2018, when I ran my first 100 miler, I was wishing that I was doing more creative work. I missed editing. I was busy helping create the Final Cut Pro editing software working at Apple, but I was like so busy working all the time that I wasn't creating. And so I set out to document my 100-mile journey, at least just for me, because I didn't know if I was ever going to do anything like that ever again. So I used my phone as a camera and I captured that journey and turned it into a little film. It was fun to do. But then that sort of motivated me to do it better, because I needed something better than my phone as a camera. So over 2019, I started to make more videos of my shorter runs by carrying a GoPro. And I was out there watching YouTube to get intel about the races I was running. And so I thought, well, I could be one of those people making videos for other people who are looking for races to run. And that's kind of how I got into it, just by making documenting my races. And then I recorded the Moab race in 2019. And, you know, a lot of these races, like if I can remember like making a 50K, doing a 50K, and the race video might be like 7 minutes long, pretty concise. But when I went to make the video for Moab 240, it was, it's a much longer distance. And so you can't do 240 miles, 4.5 days. You can't do that in 7 minutes. At least I didn't think I could. So I ended up making like this, I don't know, 45 or 50-minute film. But I thought it was pretty good. And then it happened to be that film came out during COVID lockdown times. And so YouTube ended up, like, the algorithm suggested it to all kinds of people who had no business watching that, because they weren't runners, they weren't interested in the distance. But it appealed to a lot of people because I think there was a lot in that film that was not just about running. It was about the story of a person just overcoming this difficult thing. And I had pacers and crew with me. Anyway, it was a pretty good video, if I say so. Anyway, it took off. And so I got a lot of views from that, and a lot of comments from people as well that really motivated me to continue with it. I'm like, okay, well, this longer format seems to work for people. So when I went to do Cocodona that inaugural year, I went and I recorded that. People liked that video. And so it just sort of became a thing, I guess, where I like to make the videos of my runs, and it has put me into a place in the community where, you know, I go to events and a lot of people recognize me from my YouTube channel. And that's also really motivating for me, because it's thrilling for me that I have an experience, I document it, somebody else watches it, and then that motivates them to take on that thing. So I did Moab in 2022. And so 3 years later, after my first Moab, and as I was in the parking lot, like walking to go to bib pickup, and some guy, I don't remember who he was, but some guy walked up to me, he saw me, he pointed, he said, "This is your fault," is what he said. And I get that a lot. And it just makes me so excited, because I love this sport, and the fact that somebody is taking this on as a result of having watched me do it is thrilling for me. So yeah, I'm really happy about that.
You basically described like the reason why I started this business and have been able to continue it for 3, now starting our 4th year, is because we get messages on all different platforms. Like, I read Wes's story, or I saw Wes's video and it really inspired me to go do X or go do Y. And it's pretty cool to see the sort of that domino effect take place throughout the process. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, potentially, we will be tagging Wes, and then you'll be able to go see his videos from there. And then who knows, like I said, I'll probably be up at the Divide 200. I'll end up in your video for that at the end of the year too.
I sure hope so.
So Wes, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. We're going to jump into rapid fire questions. And because we are endurance athletes, they are all about food.
Okay.
And so if you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Top 3 candies are?
Sour Patch Kids, red licorice, and caramel.
Candy corn, is that a candy, or is it just earwax covered in sugar?
Whatever it is, it's disappointing.
It's garbage is what it is.
That's right.
Peeps. Are Peeps a real candy, or is it just a dust ball covered in glitter?
Yeah, I do not enjoy eating Peeps.
So we have been told multiple times, mind you, that the best way to eat a Peep is stale. And I'm like, so you're telling me you're going to take something that's bad and allow it to get worse before it turns good? That doesn't add up.
Amazing.
Is red velvet cake a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
It is probably the best flavor.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I love red velvet cake, but partly because I love the frosting.
Yeah. That's the
so
only
good.
reason. Otherwise, it's just chocolate cake with a lot of red food dye.
Yeah, it's true.
Where do you stand on carrot cake?
Oh, and I love carrot cake. When I was a kid, I hated it because my dad loved it. Or something like that. But as I've become an adult, I've totally come around on carrot cake. I'm a huge fan. But then also a lot of that is because of the frosting.
Yes. Thumbs up or thumbs down on raisins in carrot cake?
I think I'm gonna put a tentative thumbs up. I'd like to try it.
Yes. Thumbs up or thumbs down on pineapple in carrot cake?
I'm also willing to try it.
What about fruitcake? Fan of fruitcake, or let me use it as a doorstop?
Yeah, I think I'm less interested in fruitcake.
Is a hot dog a sandwich or a taco?
Oh my God, it's neither because I eat them just plain or naked. I take 2 cheesy hot dogs, set them next to each other in a paper towel, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, and now I've got a snack. I eat it without. I don't need a bun. I don't need to be a sandwich or anything. It's just, yeah.
Well, I can appreciate the fact that you're willing to eat hot dogs, because there are so many people who are like, I'm not eating that shit. And I'm like, it's a hot dog. It's fantastic.
Especially when it's got cheese inside.
So you're a hamburger guy at the long races. What about hot dogs at long races? Have you gone that route too?
Yeah, there have been aid stations that have hot dogs, usually as an alternative to having a burger. So yeah, I'll definitely have it. It's just disappointing in comparison to what I really want.
One of the best hot dogs I've ever had was at the top of Mingus during Cocodona.
Oh yeah.
They had vegan hot dogs up there. And I told my crew, I'm like, bun, potato chips in the bun, mustard, hot dog, mustard, potato chip. Like that's how it had to be made. So I could have all the different textures as I was inhaling them at the top of Mingus.
I love that.
What's the one topping you have to have on pizza, or is plain the best way to go?
My favorite pizza is pepperoni pizza, especially like extra pepperoni. That's just my favorite.
Brownies, nuts or no nuts?
No nuts, please.
And are you the center brownie guy, or are you the edge along the crust along the edge?
Crust along the edge. I like that very much.
Awesome. Wes, thank you so much. You were great at the rapid fire food questions.
Good. More skills.
We're going to have you back on the show because of those answers.
Yeah, good. Awesome. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Good luck at Cocodona in a few months,
Jason.
And I will see you over at the Divide 200 in September.
Yeah, I'll see you up there. Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Bye.